Hello everyone, my name is Azrin Shazi and I will explain to you guys about the concept of life cycle costing. Life cycle costing is actually a costing technique that tracks and accumulates the actual costs and revenues attributable to a project, product or service from the day that it's created or invented until the day that its useful life ended or the project is abandoned. The main important part in life cycle costing is the process of compiling all costs incurred by the owner or the producer over the project or product lifespan. Therefore, it can be used to estimate the total cost of ownership. Imagine that you are going to be an agricultural producer, then you will not only going to incur costs for the purchase of seeds, but also you are going to incur costs for the maintenance, such as fertilizer, water supply, and even direct labor costs. And bear in your mind that you will have to incur for harvesting costs. And there are many other costs that you will have to incur until the end of your project. And that is what is life cycle costing. Now, what is the difference between life cycle costing and the traditional cost accounting? Firstly, let's look at traditional cost accounting. It is a system that reports cost profitability on a calendar basis. However, life cycle costing involves tracing costs and revenues on a product or service over several calendar periods. So, life cycle costing is able to determine a more accurate profitability of product by the end of its economic life compared to traditional cost accounting system. Now, let's move to the objectives of life cycle costing. Firstly, life cycle costing will assist management to smartly manage the total cost throughout the product's life cycle. Management, they can estimate the upcoming expenses or revenue, and therefore they can efficiently allocate resources throughout the life cycle. Next, it determines which areas that cost reduction efforts are likely to be more effective, because we can see which alternative that actually costs less in the long term. Next is projecting cost impact of various design and support opinion. By having a life cycle costing, it helps you to project the cost and the impact by having a various strategies and support and opinion from others. Lastly, life cycle costing will help to evaluate investment alternatives and opportunities more effective in the long-term run. Next, we move to purpose of life cycle costing. One of the purpose of life cycle costing is actually to choose between two or more assets. In other words, it helps you to make a wise decision. Choosing to buy a second-hand car might seem cheaper due to low acquisition price. However, you might have to incur higher costs by paying a higher maintenance charge. Next, determine asset benefit. Life cycle costing helps you to accurately evaluate which alternatives that provide you the most reliable assets, the benefit that will inflow to your company. It also prevents you from overestimate the profitability from the assets.
So hello guys, my name is Fauzan Yusof. So today I am going to explain to you guys about the phase of life cycle costing. So the first phase of life cycle costing is development phase. In this phase, the product has a research and development stage where costs are incurred but there is still no revenue generated. During this stage also, a high level setup cost will be occurred. So in this stage, products are not yet introduced in the market, so there will be losses as no profit was gained. So the second phase is introduction phase. In this phase, this is where the product introduced in the market, and for the first time, customer might be not aware, so organization must do something to spend further on advertising. Therefore, in this stage, the firm is still going to make still sales, but there will be still a losses. So the third phase is growth phase. In this phase, the product gains a bigger market as the demand starts to build up. Sales revenue increases and the product begins to make profits. Unit costs tend to fall as fixed costs are recovered over greater volumes. So in this stage, competition also increases, or thus the company may need to reduce price to remain competitive, as there are so many competitors entering the market. So the fourth phase is maturity phase. In this phase, the growth in demand will start to slow down and it will enter a period of relative maturity. It will continue to be profitable. However, the price competition and the product differentiation will start to erode profitability. Reduce. So in this stage, company also usually we use the most advertising to sustain its growth due to there are many new competitors coming into the market. So the fifth phase in life cycle costing is decline phase. This is where the market will say that though your product has come to an expiry, so the demand will start to fall and the price also will start to fall. So during this stage, companies should thinking about stop selling the product and started to develop a new one. So in this stage also, there will be incur a new level of R&D and other setup costs to introduce a new product. So as you can see, this is a diagram how each phase should operate regarding their sales revenue and profits. As you can see in the maturity phase, each reach the peak highest profit and also revenue. And you can see when in decline, the revenue and the sales profit start to decline. And the growth start to increase one by one. Introductions start to recover from the loss in the sales revenue, but still in terms of profit, still there is a loss. In the development, everything is a loss because it's still a new and customer doesn't even aware about it. So guys, let's go about to the example of the basic assessment of the life cycle costing. Let's say you want to buy a copier or printer. The purchase price is $2,500. Next, the installation price is $75. Third, operating. As usual, if you need to use the printer, also you need to use the ink cartridge and paper. So you estimate you will spend at least $1,000 and also $300 in terms of electricity usage. So as you can see now, the cost is almost $4,000 plus. So the next one is maintenance. It will cost you $550 if there is a broke. Financings, you have interest 87.50% interest, and depreciation, as usual, asset will have a depreciation in value whereby your asset will be go down 150 each years. And if you decide to disposal, you will have to at least pay $100. So at the end, although the purchase price initially that you buy is $2,500, the life cycle cost of the copier or printing could end up you more than $4,500. As I said, guys, that's why life cycle costing is very important in all aspects of business for them to calculate their assets earning, their asset owning. So there will be a necessary action that can be taken so these things can be controlled. So that's it from me, guys, regarding life cycle costing phase and assessment. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shazi and Mr. Fauzan. My name is Zulhilmi Shauki, and I'll be looking into the benefits of life cycle costing and the application of life cycle costing in assisting the process. The first benefits of life cycle costing is that individual product profitability can be measured more accurately, since all costs, both production and non-production, will be traced to individual products over their completed life cycles. By having a product life cycle costing will also result in earlier actions to generate revenue or to further lower the cost that might be considered either in the future or earlier in the process. Other than that, by having a more accurate and a realistic assessment over the revenues and costs from the project, A better decision can be made by the management, at least within a particular life cycle stage that they are focusing more into. The way of the users of life cycle costing thinking is that it can promote long-term rewarding in contrast to short-term profitability that are usually being used when we are calculating profit and loss. Long-term rewarding is more realistic since usually the users of the project are the projects that took very long period which exceed 1 or 2 years to complete. Now, how do we know that a new product that will be launched available in the future will be a success or a failure? So, life cycle costing accommodates this by giving an accurate feedback on both ideal success or failure of those new products that will be available by the company. Next, it helps management to understand the consequences of developing and making a new product, and also to identify areas in which cost reduction efforts are more likely to be effective. Very often, most of the time, in the product lifecycle cost are determined by decision made in the development stage, since most of the cost is being incurred during that stage. Therefore, it is important to focus on this cost before entering the market. And lastly, having a life cycle costing will benefit through having an insight into understanding and managing the total cost incurred throughout its life cycle. Identifying this cost is important because every stage will incur different costs, and not all stages will give revenues to the company. Non-production costs will become more visible through life cycle costing, and the potential for their control is increased. Next, let's look into the application of life cycle costing in assisting the process of planning, control, and decision making. First, let's look into the general overview of the application. Through life cycle costing, it helps to identify and maximize profitability. It also helps to minimize costs, and in the end, it helps management to improve their forecasting skills. In the planning stage, life cycle costing helps management to identify cost drivers that will affect overall life cycle of the product, and the estimation of the number of occurrence of the cost. This will help with the budgeting process, since the management will have more accurate data that have been captured in the life cycle costing process. Hence, making a detailed schedule and to identify any possible variance in the estimation cost with the actual cost will be greater, and future monitoring will be increased. During the control stage, life cycle costing helps management to make a comparison between the estimated cost that they had made and the actual cost incurred. From there, any variance can be analyzed, and further optimization and improvement can be conducted. Other than that, it can also be used as a reference in the future project. Lastly, in the decision-making process, lifecycle costing will help management to determine the relationship between several costs in the product lifecycle, and to see to what extent does these costs relate to each other and impact from any decision that will be made by the management. From having a life cycle costing, it will help the management to decide which alternative is worth being pursued based on the total life cycle cost that they from the total life cycle cost that they have conducted and calculated for any specific product.
Life cycle costing is one of the most reliable costing method. However, there are also challenges in implementing life cycle costing. One of it is time consuming, as it required sophisticated data collection and also reliable information. Besides that, it might lead to inaccurate estimation, as the ability of analysts to find lower cost alternative is limited. And lastly, it will lead to higher operating costs. As a conclusion, life cycle costing might not be suitable for aggressive business. However, it might provide a better total overall cost for a project or product in the long run.